Introduction. Indications of a growing interest in Buddhism can be seen in various sections of Indian society, and with this interest, there is a growing demand for a clear, consistent understanding of the life and teachings of the Buddha. For those who are not Buddhists, however, it is incredibly challenging to present the Buddha's life and teachings in a way that forms a coherent whole. When you rely on the Nikayas, not only does presenting a consistent story of the Buddha's life become difficult, but presenting some parts of his teachings becomes even more so. It is not an exaggeration to say that of all the religious founders in the world, the task of portraying the life and teachings of the founder of Buddhism is uniquely perplexing. One might ask, shouldn't these issues be resolved to clarify the path for understanding Buddhism? Isn't it time for Buddhists to step up and engage in a general discussion, shedding light on these problems? In an effort to spark a discussion, I wish to lay out these issues. The first pertains to a pivotal event in the Buddha's life, his parivraja, or renunciation. The traditional explanation suggests that he took parivraja upon seeing a dead person, a sick person, and an old person. But this explanation feels absurd on the surface. The Buddha renounced his life at the age of 29. Why then would it take until then for him to see these common sights? These are events that occur repeatedly, and it's hard to believe the Buddha had never witnessed them before. It's simply implausible to suggest that this was the first time he encountered them. So if this traditional answer doesn't hold, what is the real reason behind his renunciation? The second issue concerns the Four Noble Truths. Do these teachings truly reflect the Buddha's original message? If life is sorrow, death is sorrow, and rebirth is sorrow, what hope is there? If sorrow is inescapable, then what can religion or philosophy offer to relieve humanity? The Four Noble Truths seem to strip away hope, making Buddhism seem like a gospel of pessimism. Did the Buddha truly teach this, or is this a later addition by monks? This question undermines the very foundation of Buddhism for non-Buddhists, posing a serious challenge to accepting the Buddha's teachings. Next, we encounter the issue of the soul, karma, and rebirth. The Buddha denied the existence of the soul, yet he affirmed the doctrines of karma and rebirth. This contradiction is perplexing. How can karma and rebirth exist if there is no soul? If the soul is absent, how can these concepts function? Did the Buddha use these terms differently from how they were understood by the Brahmins of his time? If so, how? And if he used them in the same way, doesn't this create an irreconcilable contradiction? These are questions that demand resolution. Finally, there is the question of the bhikkhu, or Buddhist monk. What was the Buddha's true intention in creating the bhikkhu? Was he aiming to create a perfect person, someone who transcends the world? Or was his intention to create a social servant, someone devoted to helping others and serving as a friend, guide, and philosopher? This question is not just academic, it impacts the very future of Buddhism. If the bhikkhu is meant to be only a perfect man, he serves no purpose in spreading Buddhism, as perfection alone can be selfish. But if the bhikkhu is a social servant, he may hold the key to Buddhism's survival. This issue is not just about doctrinal consistency, but about the future of Buddhism itself. In my view, the Journal of the Mahabodhi Society often feels like a dull read, not because the material is uninteresting, but because it seems to fall on a passive audience. After reading an article, one naturally wants to hear the reader's thoughts and reactions. But all too often, readers remain silent, leaving the writer without any feedback or engagement. This silence is discouraging, and it is my hope that my questions will inspire readers to respond, to engage in this critical dialogue, and to contribute their perspectives to these ongoing discussions. In the 6th century BC, northern India was a land of many small states, each with its own unique structure. Some were monarchical, others were not, and among them, the monarchical states stood as powerful entities. 16 kingdoms like Anga, Magadha, Kasi, Kosala, and Malla were part of this political landscape, while non-monarchical states such as the Sakyas of Kapilavastu and the Lichavis of Vaisali offered a contrast in governance. The Sakyas, though independent, were later overshadowed by the king of Kosala, who established his paramountcy over them. But despite this, the Sakyas continued to maintain their identity, governed by rotating ruling families, each led by a Raja. At the time of Siddhartha Gautama's birth, It was Suddhodana's turn to be the Raja. Suddhodana's wealth was evident in his large estate and vast retinue. His lands were so expansive that 1,000 plows were used to till them. He lived a life of luxury and grand palaces, yet it was his connection with Mahamaya, his wife, that would forever change the course of history. Mahamaya, the daughter of Anjana, a Kolya from the village of Devadaha, was a woman of great beauty and grace. When she celebrated a midsummer festival with lavishness, devoid of intoxicants, little did she know that this very occasion would bring forth a dream that would shape the future. In the dream, the four world guardians carried her to the Himalayas, and a divine figure, the Bodhisattva Sumedha, appeared before her, asking her to be his mother. Awakened from this vision, Mahamaya shared her dream with Suddhodana, and together they sought the wisdom of 8 Brahmins. The Brahmins, after their ritual offerings, interpreted the dream with awe. They foretold that Mahamaya would bear a son who would either become a universal monarch or a Buddha, a dispeller of illusions. As her time to give birth approached, Mahamaya expressed her desire to return to her father's home in Devadaha. Suddhodana, ever supportive, ensured her journey was filled with grandeur, sending her with a great retinue and through a lush pleasure grove known as the Lumbini Grove. It was here, under the shade of the royal sal trees, that the extraordinary moment unfolded. The grove, alive with the colors of blooming flowers and the symphony of birds, enchanted Mahamaya. As she reached for a low-hanging branch, the act of holding it brought on the labor pains. Standing beneath the tree, the child was born into the world with the earth and sky seemingly bearing witness to this divine event. The baby was Siddhartha Gautama, born on the Vaishakha Purnima day in 563 BC. The birth of Siddhartha was not just a personal joy for Suddhodana and Mahamaya, but a moment of celebration for the entire Sakya clan. After many years of marriage and longing for a child, the arrival of a son was a blessing, a moment of profound happiness for the family and the entire state. As Suddhodana, the Raja, rejoiced in the birth of his son, it marked not just a familial event, but the beginning of a legendary journey that would change the course of history. The boy was born as prince, destined for greatness, his arrival filled with joy, hope, and promise for the future.